They talk about mourning what might have been. I can certainly understand that perspective, and I definitely feel a sense of grief, but not in the same way. Hey, I'm Shane. Today I want to talk to you about a really common experience after an adult autism diagnosis, autistic grief. When late diagnosed autistic or ADHD people talk about how they felt when they first received their diagnosis, a lot of times they mention grief. Maybe this is something you've experienced too. Often their initial response is to feel relieved. They're looking back on all of the challenges they faced throughout their life. They finally understand why they struggled with so many of those things, and they now know that they were not the problem. They're not broken or bad in some way. They just have a brain that functions differently than the way the world expects. But then that initial relief will start to fade and a deep grief settles in. They talk about mourning what might have been, looking back on the course of their life and thinking about how things might have been different if they had known they were autistic or had ADHD, if they had had the support that they needed all along. I can certainly understand that perspective, and I definitely feel a sense of grief, but not in the same way. I don't feel mournful about what might have been, because the truth is that for me, it couldn't have been. When I was growing up in the 90s, we didn't know as much as we do now. And the way my autism and ADHD presented would never have been identified at the time. So to me, grieving what might have been if I'd known I was autistic and had ADHD, it's kind of like mourning the fact that I couldn't FaceTime with my grandmother back in the 90s. So I only saw her face once a year when we visited her. Of course, it would have been nice to be able to see her more often, to see her face to face, but FaceTime hadn't been invented yet. So obviously we couldn't do that. And so it doesn't make sense to me to mourn that. How do you feel about this? Have you experienced a sense of grief over what might have been? I do have some feelings of grief, but if I'm grieving anything, it's the loss of that idealized version of myself that I've always had in my head and that I dreamed about one day becoming. The one who had all the success, the one who had the amazing career, the one who had accomplished all the things, the one who was thriving socially and had respect and admiration, and the one who could live his life however he wants, go where he wants, when he wants, and have the freedom to just experience the world. That's kind of what I'm grieving, is that vision of myself that I hung on to so tightly for so long. And now it's kind of evaporated in the light of this new understanding. It's strange to mourn the loss of something that never actually existed. Because the truth is, that guy was never real in the first place. He was just a coping mechanism I created that helped me to escape the reality of who I thought I actually was. And that's the version of me that's broken and bad and fundamentally flawed, the one who's weak and lazy and undisciplined and socially awkward and weird, that guy. And then of course, once I got my diagnosis and I started to learn about autism and ADHD and about myself, I realized that guy was never real in the first place either. So who am I really if neither of those versions of me is real? Well, I am an autistic person. I'm a person with ADHD. I'm a person who struggles with executive dysfunction and has trouble regulating my attention. I'm a person who has sensory sensitivities and communication differences and social challenges. I'm a person who has a sensitive nervous system and very real energy limitations. And that's another area where I'm grieving. I mourn the limits I'm discovering. I mourn the consequences of ignoring those limits that I've experienced, because I used to just push past the limits and suffer the consequences. I wouldn't have recognized them as consequences from pushing past my limits. I would have thought it was just weakness or sickness or something else. And I used to think that a strong person would just push past whatever those limitations are, would never acknowledge a limitation and would just push through it and get things done, consequences be damned. But now I know that recognizing my limitations and choosing to take care of myself is a form of strength. It's what enables me to show up in the most meaningful and authentic way for the people that I love. So am I grieving? Yes. And I'm also rejoicing, and I'm learning every day. I'm learning more and more, not just about autism and neurodivergence in general, but about myself. Instead of grieving what might have been, I'm discovering what is, and I'm excited about what could be. Because yeah, the reality of who I am is that autistic person with those challenges, but it's also true that despite those challenges, I've accomplished a lot of things in my life that I'm proud of. And what's even more true, what's even more important to understand is that my value as a person never came from those accomplishments to begin with, and neither does yours. Your value as a person comes from the fact that you are a human being alive on the planet. You have innate dignity as a person. You are already deserving of love and respect and friendship, and so am I. It's something I'm working hard to recognize and internalize and actually accept. Just like all the rest of this, it's going to be a long journey, but I'm excited to be on it, and I'm happy to be discovering the real me. So what about you? What are you grieving? What are you rejoicing about? What have you discovered about yourself lately? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like more stories, strategies, and tactics about living life as a neurodivergent person, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video. Let me know in the comments how you feel, and I'll talk to you soon.